Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm sorry, I think we got a little problem with the audio. As you know, my name is Cristina Yiguren, and I'm the coordinator of International Graduate Services and Support Center. I want to remind you that we are recording this webinar so that you can watch it later on our YouTube channel, and you're also going to get a recording shortly. I want to invite you as well to follow us on our social media accounts where you can get the latest information about the center. We're going to host some exciting events next month as well about immigration. And the most exciting thing, we're going to host a networking event. So if you belong to any of our technology programs, such as advanced project management, food safety, quality assurance, power engineer, artificial intelligence, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we do have a lot of programs in technology. I do recommend you to follow us. And if you want to participate as a speaker, please don't hesitate and send us an email to internationalgrad@lambtoncollege.ca. As you know, we offer some services for you, pretty much immigration, career advice, and networking events. The purpose of this center is to help you in your post-graduation journey. Also, there are countless reasons why you can take pride in being a Lambton graduate, as I'm also very proud of working here. We've been ranked as one of Canada's top research colleges, and we're here to support you all the way, even after graduation. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. I'm sure you know her if you have been following our webinars. Her name is Elizabeth Long, and she's a leading immigration lawyer in Canada. Elizabeth holds a Juris Doctor law degree from University of Toronto. She also holds a master's degree from York University. Elizabeth has been certified by the Law Society of Ontario as a specialist in citizenship and immigration law, a prestigious list of which only approximately 65 lawyers in Canada belong. And I've been saying this for a long time, but every time I'm saying, I keep surprising myself. So she is great. We have a very good lawyer with us today, and I'm sure you will get great value in today's session. Thanks a lot again for being with us, to our graduates. And Elizabeth, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was so nice. I'd love to go over the slides with you guys today. Now, we have just even today, there was a huge announcement about the doing away with arranged employment points. And, we have so many changes all the time to immigration law. So we will be adding you guys after this to the newsletter list, but we will send you guys news about what's going on with immigration and changes to immigration. And the recording is also, Lambton College also has the recording there, so you guys can view that as well. While I'm going through the slides, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A button. And at the end, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. Put them in the Q&A button, not the chat box, because that's where we're going to look at the questions. All right, let's get started. Okay, hold on for 1 second here. Christina, somehow your picture keeps oh, now it's better. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's get going. All right, so today we're going to talk about permanent residence options, and we're really going to focus on Ontario and the permanent residence options that are here today. Now, we will, once the RCIP program comes out, look at RCIP. It's out on the federal side, but the community hasn't issued theirs yet. And once that happens, we'll have a special program for that. But today we're going to look at some of the ones that are currently out. So one of the options we had, so let's go through the permanent residence. First of all, I just wanted to go over the NOC codes. For those of you who don't already know, there's a huge difference in permanent residence between the recognition of high-skilled versus low-skilled work. Most of the time, in order to qualify, you need to have high-skilled work. High-skilled work is defined by the government under the National Occupation Classification Codes, NOC, for tiers that are 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's high-skilled. Tier 4 and 5 is low-skilled. So oftentimes when you're going through that, you might think, well, my work is, high skilled, right? So for example, let's take a bank, for example. If you are working at a bank, do you think that's high skilled? Maybe or maybe not. If you're in the call center and you're just answering questions about, about credit cards or selling people credit cards, etc., that's not going to be necessarily high skilled. A teller is not high skilled. Now, if you are going to be an executive assistant, that's high skilled, right? If you're going to be if you're going to be a accounting, a bookkeeper, that's high skilled. But if you're going to be a county clerk, that could be low skilled. So you really need to look at what the duties are. It's not necessarily what you're called, okay? It's really looking at what exactly do you do on the government website. And also, sometimes you have to pay attention to the employment requirements. So for example, an accountant in Ontario has to be certified, has to be a CPA. So if you are not a CPA, maybe outside of Canada, you could have been working as an accountant. But if you're in Canada and you're in Ontario and you don't have a CPA, then the knock code probably wouldn't be accountant. Knock code might be bookkeeper. Okay, so those are some of the things you have to keep in mind when you're trying to define what occupation you work in. And why is that important? Because when we look at the permanent residence options like express entry, like OIMP, etc., it's all about the occupations. So let me first run through express entry and how that works. In order to even enter the system, you have to first qualify through one of three categories, and you have to create an online profile. The three categories are the Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, and the Federal Skilled Trades class. Now, in the government recently made an announcement saying that this year they are going to concentrate on people qualifying under the Canadian Experience class. And in fact, if you take a look at what most of the draws have been last year and recently, when it's the general draws, they have almost all of them been for people under the Canadian Experience class, not for everybody who entered the pool. However, we do have category-based draws. And for those category-based draws, then if you enter it under another category like the Federal Skilled Worker class, you could be invited to apply. Okay, so once you create an online profile, you will enter the Express Entry pool. Now, if you enter the Express Entry pool, does that mean then that you have applied for permanent residence? No, you have not applied for permanent residence just because you entered the pool, okay? When you enter the pool, it's just an indication to the government that A, you might qualify, and B, that you're interested. You become a candidate. Once you enter the pool, you'll get a series of points based on your background. And then every once in a while, sometimes it's every week, every 2 weeks or so, the government has a draw where they invite people who they want to apply for permanent residence. It's only after you receive that invitation to apply that you can actually apply for permanent residence. Okay, so just quickly, I'm just going to go through a couple of the programs to enter the pool. The first one is the Federal Skilled Worker class, and that's for people, even if your work experience is not in Canada, even if you only have work experience while you're studying, you could still qualify. The work experience required for the Federal Skilled Worker class is 1 year of high-skilled work experience that's continuous in one occupation. And so it's full-time. So it could be anywhere, it could be outside of Canada, it could be while you're studying, it could be self-employed work. Okay. Other than that, we do take a look at different factors and then see if you meet enough of the factors to qualify to get into the pool. You'll also have to meet minimum savings as well in order to qualify. The second one, the Canadian Experience Class, is very important because, like I said, when the government does general draws, that's when they are not differentiating with regard to whether or not you know French or what occupation you have. They just do a general draw. They for the past while and probably for this year, they're usually only inviting people who qualify under the Canadian Experience Class. And so to qualify for the Canadian Experience Class, the work experience that you need is 1 year of high skilled work experience that is in Canada, and you're working for a Canadian employer, someone who's an employer who's registered in Canada, and it's something where you're employed. So you're not self-employed, you're not a contractor, okay? You're employed, and it's something where you're working while you're not a full-time student. You're not registered as a full-time student. So something for yourself where you've completed your program. It has to be legal work experience, but it's not necessarily that you have to hold the work permit. So for example, for those of you when you've graduated and you're waiting for your work permit, as long as you've submitted your work permit within the required time, then you can actually start working while waiting for your work permit. So those 4 or 5 months while you're working and waiting for your work permit would be counted towards the Canadian Experience Class. Now, the work experience for the Canadian Experience Class does not have to be in the same occupation. It does not have to be for the same employer. Okay? All right, so I'm not going to talk about skilled trades. They haven't had a draw for that in ages. Okay, now let's talk about your score. So what happens after you enter the pool, depending on what is entered into your profile, the system will generate a score for you, and that's your CRS score. And when the government invites people, they invite people based on certain things like how you qualify, for example, Canadian Experience Class, or they might invite people based on the category-based draws that we'll talk about. But they always still look at how high your score is. And that is because express entry, people say, oh, it's the lottery. It's not a lottery. It's a competition. And what the government does is they skim the cream. They take a look at how many people they want to invite, what category, and they invite the top whatever number that they want to invite. Okay, so your CRS score is very, very important if you want to go through the express entry system. So what are the different categories? What are the different factors that they look at? Well, the first thing is age. You can't get any younger, okay? But you can certainly apply while you can before your next birthday. When you turn, another year older in your 30s, your points start dropping -5, -6 points. In your 40s, it's a fast drop, -10, -11. By the time you get to your 45th birthday, the good news is you don't have to worry about age anymore. But the bad news is you get a 0 on your age points. Compared to someone in their 20s who would get 110 or 100 points, that's a huge disadvantage. So with regard to age, you definitely want to apply, before your points start sliding even more. Your education. Now, if you have had if you've had a 3-year program, for example, if you had a bachelor's back home, and then you've done another program in Lambton College, that will really boost your score up. 2 programs will be much better than 1 program. Language score is very important, and we want to see scores of at least the CLB 9s in every single category. So make sure you study for your exams. I don't care if it's your first language, is your only language, it doesn't matter. Make sure you know what to expect when going into your language exam, because you don't want to leave very, very precious points on the table. Relevant Canadian work experience. That's the same kind of work experience I was telling you guys about that qualifies you for the Canadian experience class. Foreign work experience. If you have high skilled foreign work experience outside of Canada, you have to be able to prove it, okay? And especially if you guys didn't declare things properly on your work permit application or your study permit application, sometimes that could be an issue. Make sure you're declaring all of your work experience in the last 10 years like you're supposed to, okay? But that could give you some points. Your spouse's education, language, Canadian work experience. Who is your spouse? Your spouse is certainly someone you're married to, but also someone who is common law with you. Okay, if you have lived with them for at least a year and you are in a conjugal-like relationship, then you are common law. It doesn't matter whether you think you're, that much in love and your relationship is that serious. You are family as determined by the Canadian government. And so when you are family, you have to declare each other as family. Now, if you are saying, well, my spouse is not going to accompany you, not going to accompany me, you actually have to prove that. Why aren't they accompanying you? Why do they not want to get permanent residence? Why wouldn't they want to get permanent residence? Okay, because if they do want to get permanent residence, then the Canadian government recently have said that it would be a misrepresentation if you say that they're not accompanying you, when really they would be accompanying you. So those are some of the things that you have to think about, because the spouse, if you add a spouse to your application, that could either add or take away from your application. Provincial nominee programs, we're going to talk about that. People often get confused. They think, oh, okay, if I'm nominated for OIMP for any program, that adds 600 points to my score. No, it does not. It depends on the kind of program that you were nominated under for the OIMP. If it was a express entry linked OIMP application, then once you're nominated, once you get the provincial nomination, you get 600 points. If it is not an express entry linked application, then you don't. You apply directly for permanent residence, not through express entry. Previous study in Canada, if it was a 1 or 2 year program, you get 15 points. If it's a 3-year program or a graduate program, a master's or PhD, then you would get 30 points. Today, the big announcement was that the government is suspending the use of arranged employment points. So, all your friends who were telling you to, get an LMIA or employer-specific work permit, those no longer would give you extra points for permanent residence. So yeah, that's the big announcement today, okay? For those of you who don't have arranged employment, that's actually some good news for you, because it brings down those other people's points down, which means that the overall general draws the points may drop. But for those of you who had an arranged employment or who had a potential to have arranged employment, unfortunately, that option is no longer there. If you have brothers or sisters who have permanent residence, then that's an option as well. And then if you, so you have 15 points for that. And then if you are fluent in French, that is a big one. Not only will it give you significant points, especially if you have CLB 7 in every single skill level, but it will also allow you to qualify under the French draws as well. And there's other things as well. So French is very important these days. And trade certification, most people don't qualify. It's for the trades, mostly the construction trades, and cooks and chefs and etc. Okay, so just wanted to talk about the category-based draws because a few weeks ago they updated these draws. So what happened with the draws is the government, I think it was last year or the year before, instituted these category-based draws where based on whether or not you speak French, and by speaking, I mean speaking, listening, and reading and writing at the CLB 7, or if you have 6 months of work experience in the last 3 years in one of the occupations, then you could, they will have special draws for each of these categories. Because they have special draws, and because each time there's not that many people in the pool who belong to that, the scores, if you belong to one of those, are much lower, and you have a better chance of getting selected. Okay, so what are the draws and what are the updates? The French is there. Healthcare occupations also there. STEM was a big difference was that the IT occupations are now cut out of that. Instead, something really odd, I thought, was that insurance agents are added to the STEM draw. Trade occupations, the cooks are now added to there. Transport occupations are gone completely. So before, some people were driving trucks, etc. Now that's all gone completely. The agriculture, agri-food occupations, almost all of them are cut, except now there's only butchers are added there. And finally, very interesting, teachers, ECEs and ECE assistants are added. All right, so I want to move on to talking about the OIMP Express entry streams. So the OIMP, Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, is Ontario's provincial nominee program. What are provincial nominee programs? Well, the federal government has made an agreement with every province and territory to allow each of the provinces and territories to select people they want to get permanent residence. And each year, each province gets a certain quota of spots that they can nominate. So overall, in this entire country this year, the PNP spots were cut by half. What is the allotment for Ontario? It hasn't been announced yet, but last year there was around 23,500, I think. This year probably will be around half that amount. Okay. So Ontario has different kinds of programs. The first program, it's the OIMP Express Entry Stream. So these programs, if you get a provincial nomination for these programs, then you add 600 points to your Express Entry application, and you'll get selected for the invitation to apply for sure, and then you can apply for your permanent residence. Okay, so how do these streams work? So these streams, you don't get to apply directly to the government. Okay, you have to create a profile in Express Entry and wait there until they issue you a notification of interest. It's kind of like, that dating app, Bumble? Well, the one where only the women can contact the men, and the men can't go and contact the women. Well, think of it that way, okay? In this kind of system, you guys are the men. You can't just go and contact the government and say, I'm interested in you. No. You are in the pool, okay? And then the Ontario government, they go in and they see who they want to swipe right on. And only when they swipe right will you get your notification of interest. And then you can contact them and apply. Okay. So who does the government tend to swipe right on? Well, they do change these things up, but there's three main categories. The first one is the human capital stream, and this one tends to be the most uh, unknown, really. You have to have a bachelor's degree in order to be selected, but other than that, they often look at various different occupations. They also look at what your underlying express entry score is as well, to invite you to apply. The second one is the French speaking. So the French speaking, you have to have the CLB of 7 in every single category, and then CLB 6 in English. And you also have to have a bachelor's degree in this. Sometimes they even select only people for certain occupations for French. Other times they have just done a general draw, notification of interest. But again, they also do look at the points as well. And the third one is the skilled trades. So this is a category where you have to be in Ontario with a work permit. You have to have at least 1 year of work experience in the trades, in one of the specified trades in the last 2 years. Okay. And then they might still look at your score, but you could be invited to apply as well. Okay, so let's move on to the non-express entry system. Okay, so again, for these kind of applications, these kind of categories, you don't get 600 points added to express entry. For these applications to work, you do first enter into the OIMP pool. You tell the government you're interested in applying, okay? And you can enter into different kinds of pools. Now, because there's different kinds of applications. There are 3 different employer-based streams, and then there's 2 master's and PhD graduates, okay? And the different pools have different kinds of points that qualify, okay? The draws, they happen quite a few times a year, but there's no real announcement made beforehand that they're going to have a draw. It's definitely not as frequent as the federal government. This year, we haven't yet had any draws because I think the government is still looking at allocations and still making decisions on how many applications to invite. They're probably still working through the inventory of applications that were submitted before, and because they don't have as many spots this year, they may delay that. But in terms of our strategy for our clients, is just to put our clients into the pool as soon as we can. You just don't want to miss that one draw, because if you miss that draw, there might not be a draw for another few months. Okay. All right, so taking a look at the employer-based stream, again, this is not an express entry stream. This is one where you have a job offer from an employer. And what does the employer have to have? Well, it depends on if the employer is located in the GTA or outside of the Greater Toronto Area. If it's in the GTA, they have to have a gross income of at least $1 million, be in business for 3 years, and have 5 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees working in the location in the GTA. If they're outside of GTA, they have to have a gross income of $500,000, have 3 Canadian or permanent resident employees, and be in business for 3 years. And the job offer that they offer you must be full-time and permanent. So this is the case for all 3 kinds of employer-based streams. Now, there are 3 kinds, like I said, and the criteria for you is different, okay? So if it is the international student stream, how do you qualify for international student stream? Well, you would have to have completed a program that is at least 2 years, or if it's a 1-year program, it would need to be either a graduate program or something with a Ontario graduate certificate, okay? And from a public university or college. And then you have to have a job offer that's high skilled, okay? And your salary needs to meet the entry level wage for the occupation as listed under the job bank, okay? So the salary is entry level. Notice I didn't say anything about work experience because you don't actually need any work experience to qualify for this, okay? However, you must apply within 2 years of your graduation of your program. Not put yourself into the pool. Apply. After you're selected, you have to apply. The second program is the skilled worker program. And for that one, you have to have a job offer that's high skilled. Your salary would need to meet median wage for your occupation. And you have to have at least 2 years of work experience in that occupation in the last 5 years in order to qualify. Finally, we have the in-demand stream. So for the in-demand stream, the job offer this is one of the only categories, other than the caregiver program that I'll talk about later on, where it could be low skilled, okay? But it is very specific as to which occupation. The occupation has to be on that list. The salary needs to meet median wage, and you have to have 9 months of work experience in that occupation in Ontario before you can qualify. Now, just because you qualify, it doesn't mean that you will actually be selected. Each of these criteria have different factors and different points. One of the nice things is none of them have anything to do with age, but depending on which one it is, work experience, where you studied. So if you study in Northern Ontario, in Sarnia, fantastic, you get 10 points. And if you have a job offer there, another 10 points. So you have immediately a lot of points if you're studying or working in Northern Ontario. GTA is Toronto is the worst. GTA is like a few points more. Outside of GTA is better. Okay. Also, a lot of times employers, this is an employer-based program, and it's actually quite good for employers because if you applied under this program, you can't really work anywhere else until you get your permanent residence. If you work anywhere else, and you quit your job and you work for someone else, then your entire application is going to be rejected. So the employer gets to keep you for a while. But the employer, sometimes they may think that, oh my goodness, this is a lot of obligations. Maybe I can't fire this person. Maybe it's like an LMIA where I have to, show that I can't find a Canadian to do the job. So it's very important that they understand that this is not a situation where they have to show they can't find a Canadian to do the job if you have a work permit. And they can fire you if they wanted to. Okay, you can't leave, but they can fire you. And also, the system right now requires the employer to provide an employer form, which has sometimes sensitive information like how much the employer makes, what their income is, how many people they have employed, etc. So oftentimes, employers may be very reluctant to provide this form to you where you then are privy to this information, you submit the application. Instead, what you could do is you could hire lawyers like us, and we could be the firewall. So when we act for both sides, we don't need to show you their information. You don't care. You just want your application to go through, and we can submit the documents on the employer's behalf to the government. And that often makes the employers feel a little bit better at all as well. But it's very important, I would say, not to wait until you get an invitation to apply. When you get an invitation to apply, you only have 14 days to submit your application. And if you just approach the employer after you get the invitation to apply, a lot of times the employer doesn't want to. It's too soon. They don't know what's happening. And you shouldn't be entering yourself unless you have the employer's support in doing this. Okay, so normally when we are hired, we speak to the employer first and make sure that they are supportive of the application. And then once you get an invitation to apply, we very easily have all the documents and can submit your application. All right, let's talk about the caregiver program. Now, this program was just announced a few weeks ago, and it's going to open next Tuesday. And there is a cap in this program. It's for people, there's two categories, one for taking care of children and one for taking care of the disabled or the elderly. And each of those will only have 2,350 spots available. And there's also a out of status or unauthorized workers category where even if you were working without authorization, you didn't have a work permit, or you currently have a visitor status, you're not working in Ontario, you could still apply, but there's only 325 spots, 125 spots for each of those categories as well. Okay, so the regular option is for people who are currently working full-time in Canada, and you must have had a job offer to take care of children, elderly, or disabled in their home. Now, the employer can be the private household, the family, or it could be organizations that hire full-time workers to provide the home care as well. Okay. You have to have the 6 months of relevant and recent work experience or 6 months of relevant caregiving training, and it has to be for those knock codes. You have to either have a high school diploma, all of you guys would qualify, and the CLB4 in English or French. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting program for those of you who are interested in this work. It's a permanent residence application at the beginning, okay? But you do have to have that job offer and you have to qualify as well. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go through some of the things to think about if you feel like, oh my goodness, my points probably aren't high enough to get invited for express entry. What should you do? The first thing is come for a consult. We'll go over your points. And there might be some things that we can just tweak. Let's say you just get another point higher on your writing score. You could get, 90 more points, for example, right? We could take a look at different kind of things. Now, this is an old slide. I said getting arranged employment points. That's now out. But we can certainly look at other sort of ways, increasing French, looking at your programs, etc., and give you some ideas. If we were to go through express entry, what is possible for you to raise your points? And then we want to look at some alternative ways to get permanent residence. We can look at, the international student stream, caregiver program. There are there are some entrepreneur routes like startup visa programs. There's the RCIP program that we'll talk about in the future. There's AIP, Atlantic Immigrant Programs. There's the provincial nominee programs in other provinces. And finally, just because you may not be able to get permanent residence right away doesn't mean that you have to give up. One of the main things that we are doing right now is to try to get people to extend your work permits. Find ways to extend your work permits, either through, sometimes we apply for LMIA, and sometimes we look at other employer-specific work permits, such as free trade agreement work permits that you might qualify for. We can take a look at your spouse. Maybe your spouse can study and you can get a postgrad work permit. I think the whole situation where the ratio of people who can get permanent residence compared to people who need permanent residence in Canada will get better as time goes by. Um, the huge glut of people who came to Canada really happened in around the pandemic time, 2021 to 2023. There were just so many people who came. And then once the government put the cap on, made a lot of changes 2024, the numbers dropped dramatically. And so I think, you know, in the next few years, it's going to be hard going with that huge cohort of people who came in 2023, 2022, getting your work permits and etc. But if you can ride it out until, you know, a year or two later, then there will be a lot more spots available to people who are in Canada as well. Okay. All right. So just getting to the questions. And before we get there, I just wanted to let you guys know that we always offer people who come to the webinars with Lambton College a special discount for the consultations. So the consultation fees for you, if you tell me that you're coming from Lambton College, is $100 plus tax. And we do everything by video conference. You don't have to come to downtown Toronto. And we'll go over your situation and offer you up a plan. Okay? All right. So let's go over some questions. If you haven't done so already, you can enter your questions in the Q&A button. All right.
Great. We do have lots of questions. I don't know if my image is working fine right now. Let's try it. But yeah, as Elizabeth said, go for a consultation. Right now, we got a lot of paths for PR. We understand better, but still, we need an immigration consultant or lawyer. $100 for immigration lawyer. It's a great opportunity. So don't forget to tell your from Lambton College so you can actually take advantage of this. We have seen some options, study French as well. We've done webinars on this as well. And the new caregiving program as well could be a solution. So just put everything on the table and then you will try to understand and find what's better for you. So let's see, we do have lots of questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say sometimes you may not qualify, you may or may not qualify right away, but it's important to come early. You don't want to come just after you think you qualify. You want to come early so that you know what you need to do in order to qualify. You don't want to waste your time doing things that may not help. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We shouldn't waste our time anymore and let's just work on our paths for permanent residence. So let's see, we do have like more than 20 something questions. Let's go through the first one. I have done a diploma in recreation therapy. I got a full-time job as a lifestyle aid, recreation aid. I'm on work permit. What's my PR path? Should I stick to the job I just got a week ago?
This is a difficult question for me to answer like this. Come for a consultation and we'll certainly look at your situation and let you know what you should do.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just the job you're currently working at, but all your background. So yeah, exactly. As she knows better than all of us. She's the expert. And let's go for the next one. My role is an intern asset management for 1 year. Are interns valid as high skills?
So interns, if you are a working in a high skilled occupation, and by working, I mean you are paid as well for your work, then yeah, absolutely. It can be counted as work experience. But just make sure it depends on the category. Oftentimes, for example, with Canadian experience class, if you're a full-time student, like if you're doing it as a co-op student, then that wouldn't count for the Canadian work experience for the Canadian Experience class or for the Express Entry Canadian Work Experience. But if it's after you've graduated, then yeah, it doesn't really matter what you're called. It matters what you do.
Okay, good. And this one goes, it's pretty similar. Work experience while studying counts for provincial nomination.
It depends on what it is. A lot of times the work experience does not count. Depending on, sometimes the points will count. Um, so it really depends on what you're talking about. Sometimes for the points, it does count for the provincial nomination, but it depends on the program.
Perfect. For a skilled trade, is a certification required even if the trade certificate is just optional?
For the Ontario skilled trades draws, you do not need the certification unless it's a necessary part of your occupation. For example, if you're an electrician and you don't have the electrician certification, then no. But if you, for example, are a carpenter and you don't have the red seal, that's absolutely fine.
All right. I have a bachelor and master's from home. Both has been assessed. Could I have points for both of them?
So you only get points for the different levels. So if you have a master, so that's all I need. That's the higher points.
All right, so you just
Don't
don't
need
need
it
to
for the
declare the
job.
bachelor's.
Yeah. You'll say you have bachelor's, but you don't need the ECA for the bachelor's. Yeah.
All right, we're getting points for the highest one then. How to declare my work experience outside Canada? Is there a template?
It's not necessarily a template. We normally have a letter, and we don't want employers to write their own letters. They don't know what to write. It takes them a long time. Normally what happens is we will draft a letter as your lawyers and tell you, hey, can you get your employer to sign off on that? But it sometimes depends. A letter is the basic thing that we'll need, but sometimes the officers may be suspicious. They might want more things. So you want to have, as many things as you can to prove your work experience. In terms of provincial nominee programs, sometimes they will want more things. So, but essentially the letter, if you don't have the letter, then there's a huge issue with that.
Perfect. I have permanent full-time job. I don't have an LMIA. I am on post-graduation work permit. I have a proof of employment offer for permanent full-time and currently working paid, not seasonal, not tier 0. Where should I say yes for valid job offer, or should it will always be no? It is for EE and
This is
OAMP.
This is not a question I can answer here right now. Normally, when we're retained, we'll take a look and make sure, based on your circumstances, how to fill in the profile.
Perfect. Healthcare occupation work experience required 1 year full-time as one position or some months or clinical assistant and for a few months as RN
So they do
is
want
also okay.
to make sure that for the 6 months, it depends on which one it is. If it's uh so when it comes to the uh, when it comes to the category-based draws, it's 6 months in one occupation for the healthcare draws. So it depends on which program it is, but normally it's in that particular occupation.
Good. I'm working as an officer administrator. Can I apply for PR or not? Ready program, is it only for Sarnia Lambton or also for Grand? And because it comes under community of Lambton.
That's a very good question. I actually don't know if Grand Bend comes in within that program. The Ready program was recently announced for certain communities, and it's really for the job offer. But I'll have to double check on that as to whether or not what's the catchment area for the Ready program.
Yeah, actually, before the webinar, we were talking with Elizabeth, and we're planning to host a webinar on the Ready program, but we didn't need more information that will come hopefully next month. So stay tuned. Let's see another one. Is there any difference if I live in GTA or outside GTA for the express entry?
Not for express entry. For OIMP, it might, depending on the program. For express entry, there's no difference.
Okay, good. If we work 10 months full-time, but 2 months part-time, when it will be added in work experience or need to do 2 more months?
It really depends on the category, and it depends on how many hours you worked part-time. Let's say you work 15 hours for 2 months, then you might be able to add that together to be equal to 1 month of work experience. Full-time hours is 30 hours per week. So yeah, so we'll need to take a look at your situation.
Perfect. We do have lots of questions. I'm afraid we won't be able to go through all of them. Let's go to this one. Hello, you mentioned that international student stream, they need to have a high skill job offer. What kind of jobs come under it? And if you can just be more specific.
So you might have missed my the first few moments of my presentation because I went through what is determined as high skilled. It's the tier 0 to 0, 1, 2, 3. That's the high skilled for the knock codes. And you might want to take a look and watch this program because I did go through that in the beginning.
Yeah, we will be sending the recording slides and everything. So you will get information there. How do you apply for extension of PGWP?
So the question is not how do you apply, is can I apply? Unless your postgrad work permit was issued to be less than what you're supposed to get because your passport expired. For the most part, you're not going to be able to get an extension, a work permit extension, as a postgrad work permit. You can only get one postgrad work permit in your lifetime. So in order to qualify for another work permit, you would have to qualify under another category. Whether or not you would qualify, um, it depends on the circumstances. But we can certainly talk about that. And that's one of the main things we want to talk about while you wait for your permanent residence or wait to qualify for your permanent residence is how to extend your status in Canada.
Perfect. If I am taking care of my own child, would it also somehow help me for the PR program for caregiver?
No, you have to be paid as a caregiver in order to have your work experience count.
We do have more questions about how much do you charge. So it is not for the entire process. It's for a consultation. So it's going to be $100 for a consultation.
Yes, and then during the consultation, we'll take a look at what you qualify for, and then we can let you know how much our fees would be if you were to hire us to help you through that process.
About tier and knock. Hello. Do employers need to provide the exact knock tier code in the letter of employment?
No, the employers are not expected to figure out the tiers. But when we apply for you, we have to notify, you have to say what the knock codes are. And we determine based on the letter. That's why we like to draft the letter and get it for the employer to review instead of the employer drafts the letter, because it's important that we showcase how your duties fit in with the correct knock code. Sometimes the employers, they don't really know what to write and they might miss certain job duties, for example, that show that you qualify under certain categories. They might miss certain details about your job. So it's important that we make sure that we have a proper letter that outlines all of the different details of your position and clearly indicates to the officer what knock code you qualify under.
Yeah, usually employers don't know about TIR and NOC, so this is when you need to search for the information and of course have a consultation. In a couple, both have studies in and outside Canada. Points will sum for both of us as well.
So for a couple, when you're applying for express entry, for example, there are points assigned to the principal applicant, who is the majority, but also points assigned to the spouse. And we're looking at things like education, language, and Canadian work experience that would count for the spouse as well.
Good. Is recreation 8 high skill?
Recreation. That's a very broad situation. Recreation could be a host of different things. So it'll depend on what you do. Come and have a chat with us and we'll make that determination then.
Good. Let's see another general question.
So it's 6:30.
Yes, time.
Maybe we have maybe one more question, maybe?
Yeah, we do have still like more than 50. Let's see if we can find a general one. There are so specific questions, a lot of them. I don't know if Elizabeth, you can find one there.
Yeah, I think for a lot of these, the best thing to do is, we can have the call. I have this one. It's a quick one. Does the skilled work experience after you graduate have to be in your field of study, or could it be in another skilled occupation as long as it meets program requirements for express entry? And that's a very good question. It's a very big misnomer and misunderstanding by a lot of people saying that, oh, my work experience has to be in my field of study. It doesn't have to be in your field of study for express entry. It could be any high skilled work experience as long as you qualified for it. So I think that's about it for today.
Yeah, that was quite a lot. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We do have like more than 50 questions we couldn't go through, but again, you will get a recording. I have shared in the chat the information from the center and from Elizabeth as well. So if you want to book a consultation, you have the information over there. You can send her an email and then you will start your process. So again, I want to remind you, if you are from our technologies, we want to invite you to our upcoming networking event. If you want to participate as a speaker, don't hesitate to contact us. And thank you so much once again, Elizabeth, and to our graduates for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. All the best, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.